So, welcome everyone. We are moving through the month of Kislev, and Kislev has a lot of holidays. Chabad particularly has a lot of special days in Kislev, particularly one of the days that was this past Shabbos, which is the 19th of Kislev, which is regarded as kind of like the beginning of the year or the Rosh Hashanah of Chassidus in the Chassidic world and in the Lubavitch world. Yud Tes Kislev is, technically speaking, it's the 19th day of Kislev, and it commemorates the getting out of prison of the Alter Rebbe, who was imprisoned in the 1800s, and he was released on Yud Tes Kislev. He was released in, sorry, not the 1800s, almost the 1800s, 1798. He was released, and he had been kept in jail for 53 days. And it's a whole long story, which is not so pertinent for us to get into now, but basically the specifics of the story are that at the time that the Alter Rebbe was the leader of the Chabad Hasidim, Eretz Israel was under the jurisdiction of the Turkish Empire. And there were already Jews making aliyah to Israel at that time. And the Alter Rebbe was trying to support the Jews who had moved to Israel, and he was collecting money and sending it over to the Jews in Israel. But Israel was under the jurisdiction of the Turkish Empire, which was an enemy of the Russian Tsar at that time. So people who were against the philosophy of the Alter Rebbe basically made sure that the Russian authorities found out about the fact that the Alter Rebbe was sending money to a Turkish colony or a Turkish land under Turkish jurisdiction, and they framed it such that the Russian authorities wanted to find the Alter Rebbe guilty of treason. So they threw him into jail for 53 days. Because in Chassidus, everything that happens down here in this physical world is really an echo, a roshem, like a reflection, and hi, Yaakov, I see you came on, so I want to greet you, a reflection of things going on in the higher worlds. The Chassidim said, if the Alter Rebbe is being thrown into jail, this is a sign from above that maybe what the Alter Rebbe was doing, which was teaching Chassidut, which Chassidus is really based on Kabbalistic ideas, and he was sort of bringing Kabbalah and Kabbalistic ideas down from a very lofty place to a more commonly accessible place. Maybe that's not really a good idea. Maybe, in fact, we're getting a message, because everything's Hashgacha Pratis, HP. Maybe the message is that what the Rebbe is doing is not good, making Torah accessible to the common folk, making Kabbalistic Torah, making all these mystical ideas accessible to the common folk. Maybe he's really not supposed to do that. So when the Alter Rebbe got freed and was released from jail, the Hasidim teach that up in Shemayim there was a court case. Is this a good idea that he's teaching Torah to the mystical Torah to the common folk, or isn't it? And in heaven, when the decree was passed in favor of, yes, he should be teaching mystical Torah to the common folk, then when he came out of jail, it was, yay, we've gotten a go-ahead. He's gotten a go-ahead. Now it's full steam ahead to actually bring mystical Torah into everybody's pocket. And that's why it's regarded as being like the beginning of a whole new way of being for Hasidim. And they even say because he was imprisoned in a place called St. Petersburg, which happens to be the same place where my husband grew up and was born. They say that there was the whole of I guess the Rebbe's life, or even the life of Chabad Hasidus, is before St. Petersburg and after St. Petersburg. Like nothing was the same after. They like got the go ahead and it's full steam ahead, making Hasidus accessible to all. Now, I just want to preface this. So that's the story of Yud-Tes Kislev. And so if in terms of Chabad and the calendar of Chabad, the Hayom Yom that I read before every class, we begin on Yud-Tes Kislev, and the year starts from Yud-Tes Kislev. And so now the beautiful edition of Hayom Yom that I use, it's all nicely golden, whatever. It's now we start again from the beginning. So today is the 24th of Kislev, but the whole thing started again on the 19th of Kislev, Yud-Tes Kislev. So that's just to tell you something about Yud-Tes Kislev, but I want to tell you a story that predates this story. And the story that I'm going to tell you has two parts. The one part, and I see Miriam joined us. I just want to say hi to Miriam. The one part is, hi. So the one part is that Rabbi Alon Anava has been saying for a few weeks now that what we need to do now is learn Zohar. That's the necessity of the hour, to learn Zohar. So first of all, what is Zohar? So Zohar is the book written by Shimon Bar Yochai, and Shimon Bar Yochai was alive at the time of the Roman Empire. And Shimon Bar Yochai, there's a famous story told that when Shimon Bar Yochai was, there were three rabbis hanging out together, and one of the rabbis, or one of the people, one of the Yidden said, wow, isn't it impressive that the Romans have built these incredible highways and plumbing and roads, plumbing, and I can't remember, bridges, something like that. And another rabbi kept quiet, and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai said, don't be so impressed, or something like that. Everything the Romans do is for their own benefit, and they only do it so that their armies can find it easier to go and be aggressive and imperialistic and go across the world and making people's lives miserable. And everything that the Romans do is really just for the sake of their armies and their might and their power. And that's why they do everything that they do. So somebody overheard this and said, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is an enemy of the state. He has to be canceled. In those days, they didn't just do cancel culture. They said he has to be killed, murdered, not murdered, but executed. So he ran away, and we know that he hid in a cave for 12 years with his son Elazar, I've forgotten, Eliezer maybe. He hid away for 12 years, and in those 12 years, he had downloads and inspirations and teachings from the higher worlds. And when he came out of the cave, he wrote all that down, and that's called the Zohar. That's the origin of the Zohar. But there is a story of the Zohar of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai talking to some of his students. Now, you know, because I always, especially on retreats, I always refer to the tree of life. And the tree of life consisting of Chesed, Gevura, let's start at the top. Chochma, Bina, Da'at, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. You know, right brain, left brain, third eye, and then right arm, left arm, heart, Chesed, Gevura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchut. That's called the tree of life. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai said it became apparent to him that people need to learn the Torah that precedes, that's above the tree of life. The tree of life is God's attributes and God's characteristics broken down and given kind of names. In other words, God has this energy, and God has that energy, and God's energy manifests in this way, and God's energy manifests in that way. And when Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai started teaching to his students, he's like, please don't be stupid. I'm not saying that there are all these separate elements of God. God is a oneness, but he manifests in this kind of way and that kind of way. And thus we have the whole thing of the tree of life. But Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai said, there's another Torah, there's another level, and that's the level above the tree of life, which is the oneness of God. That's even before all the breaking down into all the different spheres. And he said that's what Zohar is going to teach the world. That's what Zohar's role is in the world, to get to that place and connect you to the oneness that's above all of the definitions and all the different aspects and all the different ways God manifests in the world. And now I'm thinking of Rabbi Alona Nava, who said that now it's very important to learn Zohar. Why? Because learning Zohar is going to connect us to that idea of oneness of God. And the last thing I want to say about this is that there's a teaching from Rabbi Yitzchak Ginsburg, which was just put out in the last couple days, that the gematria of the word Hamas is equal to the phrase Va'ani eftach bach. Va'ani eftach bach, which means I have trust and faith in you. Which means this idea of getting to the place of everything comes from God, everything is God, God is the unity behind every single thing. And in order for us to make it through these challenging times, we have to get to that level. That is why Shimon Bar Yochai wrote the Zohar in the first place, why Alon Anava is saying that we have to connect to those ideas, and why the Alter Rebbe felt that he has to take things from those ideas and make them accessible to everybody, because Hasidus is based on the principles of the Zohar. The Baal Shem Tov takes those ideas from the Zohar and tries to make those ideas accessible to everyone. So that's why the Alter Rebbe took that risk of taking very spiritual ideas and saying they can't just be for very spiritual people, they have to be for everybody, because this is important for everybody to know these things. And so anyway, that's a little bit of background. Are there questions on that? Because that's a little complicated, maybe, maybe not. Any questions on what I just shared? Because this is important, because this is the demands of the hour, right? The demands of the hour is that even though we're going through the valley of the shadow of death, we feel no evil. Why? Because thou art with me, thy staff and thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. God is with us through thick and thin. God is always present. God is good. God is, we have trust and faith. We can't have trust and faith if we don't believe that God is all powerful and God is really part of even the uncomfortable and the difficult and the challenging. That's why it's so important to talk about faith now, because to talk about faith when everything is cool and nice and good is not really so much of the challenge. The challenge is to talk about faith when things are incredibly challenging. So any comments about that before we move on? Because we're going to get into the Parsha, and we're going to take these ideas into a person who lived in a way by these ideas and see how we see that in the Parsha. But before we do that, is there anything anybody wants to say before we move on? Because it's intense, right? It's intense, bad things, horrible things, and challenging things. And to say, well, God runs the world and God is good. Yes, people have free choice and we're given the right to have free choice, but God, there is a oneness in the world. There is that we trust in God, we believe in God, that even though horrible things are happening, we still ultimately believe that we're being watched, nothing happens randomly, everybody's life has a purpose, everybody's life is guided, etc., etc. It's intense to say all these things right now.
So then what would you say, like, what is the purpose of the lives of these monsters? You know, that
So it's a good question, and I'm glad that you're asking it. And I don't want to be glib about any of my answers.
Yeah.
But in the greater scheme of things, sometimes very bad things have to happen to us as a nation so that we change course, so that we wake up, so that we take ourselves and our purpose in life more seriously, so that we're not in illusions that we can just merge into the Western world and we'll be embraced happily, because we know that's not true. We know that we're different. We know that, I hate to say it because it's unpleasant, but we know that we hated. We know we hated because we're different. We need to know what that difference means. We need to know who we are. We need to care for each other in a different kind of way. We need to have unity between us in a different kind of way. And maybe, and I said this before, maybe every single one of those people who suffered on a soul level maybe chose that they part of a sacrifice that they're making so that the Jewish people wake up, so that we stop being asleep, so that we come together, so that we take our religion more seriously, we take our purpose in the world more seriously, we see the emptiness of Western values, which we've never seen ever before. As so obviously, we see the emptiness of Ivy League education. There's a lot of things that have happened from this wake-up call. And maybe we needed very strong medicine to pull us back from a very wayward place. I mean, I don't know, but if we take as a starting point that there's a God in the world, things happen for a reason. We don't know the whole story, but a faithful person lives with that fact that things have a purpose, things have a reason. And that's part of the way we view the world. Then the only way we can really do that in a real way is to go to that place of source, that place of God created the world. God is responsible for what happens in the world. Yes, we have free choice. And every person is choosing, are they going to be God's agent for good, or are they going to be God's agent for not so good? You know, if a person falls off a roof, in Jewish halacha, they called the person who was meant to fall off the roof. But they don't have to fall off your roof. If you put a guardrail on your porch or your flat roof, then the person who's meant to fall off the roof is not going to fall off your roof. But maybe they were meant to fall off a roof. But if you protect your house and you follow halacha, they're not going to fall off your roof. The Jews needed to be in exile. Did the Egyptians have to take such pleasure in it? No. They were punished for that. But we, for whatever reason, we needed to go into that experience. So we're going to look at the life of Yosef, and we're going to see how some of these things are manifest through his experience. So Meryl's still there, but she's still in the dark, and Miriam is there, and Karina's there, but okay. So let's move into the Parsha, and I'm going to share the screen, and you could always, follow on in your own Chumash if you feel like, that's going to be easier for you to read or whatever. So you can always do that. But so here we go. We're starting, it's Parshas Vayeshev, which means Vayeshev Yaakov be'eretz Megure Aviv be'eretz Canaan. So he dwells, he's settling. A yeshiva means to basically, a moshav has this word, a yeshuv has this word, and yeshiva has this word. It's settling, dwelling, sitting. A yeshiva boy is supposed to sit on his seat for extended periods of time. So he dwelt in the land of Canaan, and these are the generations of Yaakov. And then it says, when Yosef was 17 years old, so it's talking about the children of Yaakov, and right away it says Yosef. So I guess he's a special son. He was a shepherd. He was with his brothers, with the flocks. He was young, and he was with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah. These are the maidservants, the half-sisters of Rachel and Leah, who also married Yaakov and had children, so that between Leah, Rachel, Bilhah, and Zilpah, there were 12 sons. And then it says, and Yosef brought evil tales about his brothers to their father. So let's look at Rashi. So we're not going to look about this, evil tales. So Rashi says, he saw his brothers, the sons of Leah. He would tell his father, you know what? They ate limbs from a living animal. Well, that's a big no-no in Torah. And they were being mean to the sons of the handmaids. In other words, there was non-equality in the sons of Rachel and Leah and the sons, well, not just the sons of Leah and the sons of the maid servants. So he said they weren't being treating them well. And he says they were also, he was saying they weren't being so sneers. And then it says, actually, Yosef got a lot of these things wrong. And, but anyway, so he says this to his father. He comes to his father, and he basically, he speaks Lashon Hara. He tells tales about his brothers. So that's an interesting place for the Parsha to begin, that Yosef is telling these tales about his brother. And there's an interesting Sfat Emes. The Sfat Emes is a commentator on the Torah, and the Sfat Emes tells us a really interesting thing about this Lashon Hara. And I think it's such an interesting take on the whole story. It says that his brothers hated him because he was telling these stories. But the verse doesn't, we don't even know that Yaakov ever told his sons what Yosef had said. We don't know that they even knew exactly, if they even heard it. It says that the Sfas Emes says that whether the brothers heard the Lashon Hara or not is the reason Yosef went down to Egypt. Can anybody explain this to me? So
say that one more time.
Yeah, I'm going to say it one more time. It
It
says that the brothers hated Yosef. Let me actually go to the Let's see where we see that the brothers hated Yosef. Let's just see. I'm going to take Rashi out of it so we can see.
It was almost like in the first couple of.
Right.
Here it says.
Oh, yeah. We didn't read enough. And Yisrael loved Yosef more than all his sons because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a fine woolen coat. And his brothers saw that his father loved him more than all his brothers, so they hated him. Okay, so we're going to come back to all of those words, all of those details, because they all meaningful in their own way. So the Sfas Emes says the brothers didn't hate him because he spoke Lashon Hora, but because he spoke Lashon Hora, he ended up going to Mitzrayim. Now, why could this be? The brothers didn't even know about it. Why could it be that he would have to go to Mitzrayim because he spoke Lashon Hora? Any ideas?
This is a tough one.
It's a good question.
Yeah, this is a tough one. Why go to Egypt?
Why, if you, yeah. Well, let's talk about.
I mean, he got some major
challenges.
time out. I mean,
Let's talk about challenges. Let's talk. What is time out, Sandra? What is time
No,
out?
no, I was a joke. I said he got some major time out when he had to go.
Tell me, what is a timeout, by the way?
Oh, the time that he was in the prison.
No. What is
The
a
timeout is when you time to reflect on something that you
Right. Oh, okay. Oh,
don't
that's
know.
what you meant.
Timeout is a time to reflect. Let's say you're in a school and you get timeout.
Mhm.
What is
You
that?
have
get
to be put-
separated from the
separated.
rest.
Okay.
And you're not allowed to participate for X amount of time.
Right. Because why? Because
you did something
Committed
that
some
was
offense.
not appropriate, let's say.
did something that's not appropriate. So the Sfas Emes says a very interesting thing. I've never learned it before. He says Yosef had to go down to Mitzrayim because he spoke Lashon Hora about his brothers. And what is the role of a tzaddik? What is the role of a tzaddik in the world?
To be a non-judgmental
teach.
model, a role model. and
To be
teach.
non-judgmental,
To
to
teach.
teach, to uplift, and to
Mhm.
see good in the people, and to speak to the Father good things about the klal. Not
I was
bad
going to say, I was going to say that sort of the standard answer to these questions about why did this guy get such a terrible why did somebody in the Torah get such a seemingly out of proportion punishment is that you said he's a tzaddik. If he's a tzaddik, much more is expected of a tzaddik. But that seems like a cop-out answer to me, because there's other people that say, oh, they're all just like you and me. We're all the same.
Well,
like
the thing is that Yosef becomes a tzaddik, but he wasn't a tzaddik yet. When does Yosef behave like a tzaddik?
When
If
he
you know
when
his-
he forgives his brothers.
Mhm. I was just gonna say
Exactly.
that.
After his whole experience in Mitzrayim, his brothers are guilty of way worse than anything they were
Mhm.
doing here. And he's the one who completely exonerates him, completely. And so he's not born, his tzidkus, his righteousness isn't immediate. He grows into it. And the Sfas Emes says that one of the ways that he grows into becoming a tzaddik is that he goes to Mitzrayim and he has to go through the challenges of what it means to go through what he went through. And so in doing that, he becomes the tzaddik. So that's a very interesting, because the tzaddik is supposed to defend the people to the Father, not criticize the people to the Father, with the Father being God. That's what a tzaddik often does. He's advocating to us, to the Father. So that's a very nice idea. Okay, moving on.
Do you think the punishment for Yosef also going down to Egypt was a punishment for Yaakov because of the way he treated his son over the other brothers, and might have caused this to start happening?
Okay, so that's very good. Let's go on to the next next piece. Okay, so it says this is the Lashon Hora piece, and the next pasuk is Sandra, do you want to read it? Gimel
Sure.
or
No, I can see. What am I reading it?
three.
And Israel loved Joseph more than all his sons because he was a son of his old age, and he made him a fine woolen coat.
Okay, so you know, it's not really good to favor one child over another. You're quite right, and it creates consequences. And did Yosef go down to Mitzrayim as a punishment for Yaakov? I like the idea better that Yosef needed to have that test or that struggle to evolve,
Right.
you know, to bring out all his better qualities. Like Abraham had 10 trials and 10 tests to bring out all his inner dimensions. But let's look at, so anyway, so, you know, I'm sure that the fact that he did favor one, you know, wasn't helpful to Yosef. I don't think it was helpful. But let's look at this. So I'm going to read it in Hebrew, Gimel, what you just read. V'Yisrael ahav et Yosef mikol banav. He loved him, you know, more than all of his sons. Ki ben zakunim hu. He was a son of his old age. Lo. Va'asa lo katones pasim. And he made for him a katones pasim. And I'm not going to translate katones pasim because there's lots of different interpretations of what exactly a katones pasim is. So the English translation says a fine woolen coat. Let's see what Rashi says, because it's very deep. This and this is, there's a lot to say about this katones pasim. So let's see what Rashi says. Katones pasim. So Rashi says fine woolen garment, like it had green wool and blue wool, and like fine woolen coat. And then somebody else says, the Midrash says that it explains that it was called pasim because of his troubles later, that he was sold to Potiphar. And so there's a connection with that to them. Oh, because pasim means, you could break it down to Potiphar. That's the first person he was sold to. The sochrim, the merchants that he was sold to. I'm sorry, Potiphar wasn't the first. It was the result of the merchants, the sochrim, the Yishmaelites, the Midyanim, and then Potiphar. So this idea of katones pasim, it's a sign. It's a sign, and it's wait, somebody's not muted. Somebody's not muted who's talking, and so please mute yourself if you have noise in your space. Somebody's
It's Kareem.
I don't know who it is.
Not me.
Somebody's
That's so weird.
somebody's making noise.
I think it's Karina. She doesn't.
Rachel, you can mute all of us. You can mute
No,
it.
but Karina's
I don't
muted.
want to mute all of you because I don't.
I think you can mute individuals
It's not
also.
me. Fans are very funny.
Okay, well, whoever is
Stand up.
noisy- okay. So we're gonna look. Okay, so Rashi says it was a multicolored woolen coat. That's one thing, and then he also says that it's a reminder of the different troubles that he had: Pasim, Potiphar, the Sochrim, the Ishmaelites, and the Midianites. Pasim, reference to all of that. But there's a lot of other explanations. Some say it was a garment of silk, and a pas is a palm, and because it was made of silk, it could fold up so completely small that it could fit into his palm because it was made of fine silk. So that's an interesting explanation. It said that it could be translated as colorful, embroidered, striped, and whatever. And then many commentators say it's something that Yaakov made himself. He made it himself, and it was a new thing. But then some people identify this garment, and it's much more Kabbalistic and much more mystical than we might think in the beginning. Remember when Yaakov had to dress up in Esav's clothes? And it said that when Yaakov walked into Yitzchak's room, Yitzchak said, I smell the smell of Gan Eden. Did anybody ever learn that before? I smell the smell of Gan Eden. Why? I don't know if anybody ever learned this. Because Yaakov, with Rivka's help, took the special clothes. Now, these are two different, I'm mixing up two different stories, but I'll tell you the story anyway. He stole the clothes that belonged to Nimrod.
That's right.
That Nimrod had, that Esav had taken from Nimrod, that was special magical clothing that could help with hunting, and that Esav had these clothes and then Yaakov took them. But actually I'm mixing up my own story, because that's not the garment that Yaakov had. According to the mystics, the garment that Yaakov gave to Yosef was the same garment, and this is a mystical garment that Hashem gave to Adam in Gan Eden.
Right.
That there was a garment that Hashem gave to Adam in Gan Eden. Now we know that after Adam sinned, he felt that he was naked, and his light or, spelt with the Aleph Vav Resh, his light body changed to a body of skin, or Ayin Vav Resh, meaning like leather or skin. There's something about these garments that, this garment, I should say, one garment, there's something about the garment that Yaakov gives to Yosef that's very mystical, according to some. According to others, he wants to conceal that he's teaching Yaakov very mystical things, and so he gives him a very material kind of a garment to kind of throw everybody off the track, that really they're learning very mystical things. That's all about this garment. And apparently that it was, so maybe the two stories do overlap. Maybe there is something about this clothing that's kind of very mystical, and it gets passed on to Nimrod, and it gets passed on, and Esav uses it. I'm not sure if there's two mystical kinds of clothings or one, but in any event, just keep that in mind, that this coat of many colors has many levels of ways of interpreting it. So that's that part of that story. So then what happens? Let's go back to the story. So we're going back to the story. He gets sold to the Ishmaelites. We'll take Rashi out so we can go fast. So because his brothers hate him, and then they want to kill him. And of course, Yosef tells all about his dreams. And in all his dreams, it looks like he's more powerful than his brothers. So they hate him for his dreams. And they think that he's like usurping the leadership of the older brothers. And if you try to usurp the leadership of a king, for example, you chayiv misa, you should be executed, because the family were like a little teeny tiny political entity, and Yosef was not showing subservience to the older brothers. So they thought that maybe he is meant to disappear, and they sell him. And there's a whole story about it, how he's looking for his brothers, and then he meets a man, an Ish, a mysterious man who, directs him. And anyway, he goes to find his brothers. They throw him in a pit. Reuven comes to save him later, but it's too late. he gets cast into the pit. They take this clothing, show it to their father. They sit down and eat, etc., etc. And, you know, he's on his way to Mitzrayim. He gets sold and he comes to work for Potiphar in Mitzrayim. And then we have the whole story of Yehuda and Tamar, which we're not going to go into. And that's a whole beautiful story in of itself. We're going to skip that. And now, Yosef, let's join in the story. And he does very well. He's bought as a slave in the house of Potiphar. He's done very well in Potiphar's house. Everything he does is turns to gold. He's very blessed. He's very successful. And what happens? He's very good looking. And now it comes this fateful story when Potiphar's wife tries to seduce Yosef. And it says, and it comes to pass after all these things that the master's wife lifts up her eyes to Yosef and she says, lie with me. He's a 17-year-old boy. He's very good looking. He's far from home.
She's a cougar.
She's a cougar, exactly. He's far from home. His family abandoned him. His brothers tried to kill him. Then they decided they're not going to kill him. They're going to, you know, sell him. He's all alone in a foreign country, and she's a very beautiful, powerful woman, and she's trying to seduce him. And he says, no, you know, my master has given me, you know, reshut over everything in the house, but just, you know, you the one thing that he's not giving me, and I couldn't do this thing and sin against God. And it came that one day everybody's out and there's a big Avodah Zorah festival and everyone goes to the festival. She says she has a headache. She stays home. And of course he doesn't go because he's a Jew. And then he comes to do the work in the house and she grabs his garments saying, lie with me. And this is, let's read Pasuk 12, because this is a beautiful interpretation of this as well. Somebody want to read Pasuk 12?
In English?
Yep, that's fine.
So she grabbed him by his garment, saying, lie with me. But he left his garment in her hand and fled and went outside.
So now we're talking about garments again. He left his garment in her hand and fled and went outside. That's if you're going to be mystical and you're going to give me a mystical interpretation of this verse, tell me how mystical you can go and try to give me a mystical explanation. He left his garment in her hand and fled. A mystical explanation. Your most mystical explanation that you can find in yourself. First of all, I'll give you a hint.
Mm-hmm.
In mystical teachings, what do we call garments of the soul, for example?
The body?
Does anybody know what garments of the soul are?
People?
The body?
You've never heard of the 3 garments of the soul?
Oh, the
No, I don't know.
wait, Torah, Chesed, and is that what you mean?
Well,
Bracha, you know the answer and we don't. So
I know, but I'm kind of enjoying making you work a little bit hard. Okay.
mystical. Yeah, you can't get me to think mystical. Sorry, I'm not.
Okay, it's
Why
okay.
is that
Ears
one?
and
Okay,
mouth.
first of all, in regular understanding of garments of the soul, we think about thought, speech, and action. Those are usually called the garments of the soul. Thought, speech, and action. That's one thing. But there's another level of garment. Well, when we say thought, speech, and action, those are all things. Did somebody say the body? Did
I
someone
did.
ask what is the garment of the soul? The body.
I did. Mhm.
Yeah, so that's actually correct. The body as expressed in thought, speech, and
Mhm.
action. But in fact, you're right. The body is the garment of the soul. So just like, so this is another teaching from the Sfat Emet or Sfas Emes. My teacher calls him the Sfat Emet, but other people call him Sfas Emes. If you're Ashkenazi or modern Israeli Hebrew, he brings a very beautiful idea here. He says, just like when Avraham Avinu was told to go outside and count the stars. Give me a mystical explanation of what that means. That Avraham, Hashem said, go outside and look down at the stars. What did that mean? Because I know
Above,
go,
to go above and to look down at the jillions of stars that are going to be
go above what? Go
above your comfort, not your comfort zone, your
Nature.
nature. Go out of the natural construct. Go out of normative nature, like Suri says. Go out of that and count the stars. So in the same way, when Yaakov leaves his garment and fleds, he's leaving the physical aspect of himself. He's leaving that part. I want to read it.
Right? He's leaving his Sahara back there.
He's leaving, he's
Sort of.
connecting to a higher part of himself that is beyond his bodily self. I'll read it inside. He fled right out of his bodily wrapping, his bodily garment, just like Avraham went outside. So let's see. Because of the first sin, we were given garments of skin that came from the primal snake, right? We used to have garments of light, and then they turned into garments of skin. We were garbed, we were clothed in personhood, in humanness, in materiality. We became much more physical, right? Adam used to be like a light body, and then we became more dense. So we became garbed in personhood and corporeality. Now we first have to set the body aright. We do this through love and fear, which are our bodily feelings, and then we come to another level. So Yosef was drawn after the ways of Yaakov, and he kind of got to this level of the garments of light that existed in Eden. This is how he fled outside. He stripped himself of his physicality. He left that whole garment of physicality behind. He kind of, I guess what it means is that he managed to take a quick elevator and get onto a higher level where he could resist the temptation.
Better,
That's
he
why I
was
was
able
saying
to
he left
fly out of her hands.
That's why I was saying he left his Sahara behind, because that's really what he did.
Right.
That's
So
his
it says that he managed to return to the way of Gan Eden, in a way, a time before the garments of light had turned into the garments of skin. This is taken by the Kabbalists to mean that Adam had a light body, a more pure and less corporeal self when he still lived within Gan Eden, and Yosef, who represents sexual purity in this world, was able to replicate that self. So in other words, what the Sfas Emes is saying is, when he left his garment in the hands of Mrs. Potiphar, he totally transcended himself to this level of spirituality where he wasn't functioning like a physical person, because a physical person, a 17-year-old beautiful boy who's been propositioned really by a cougar. I love that word that Linda used.
What is a cougar?
Like a sexy tiger.
An older
vixen.
woman that goes after younger men.
Yeah,
No,
older woman
vixen.
that's trying to seduce, young defenseless boy. that for him to do that, and we've heard midrashim that say he got a vision of his father in front of his
Right.
eyes, found like his tzitzis flew up, but basically he was able to kind of take the elevator, and instead of hanging out in the basement, which is, I want this, I need this, I deserve this, I'm all alone, my family abandoned me, what do I care about what my father would think? He jumped in the elevator and took it to the penthouse level and stood high on the level of Adam Harishon before the sin. And that's how he was able to say no. And that, by the way, is why he is a tzaddik, because he was able to do that. Now, I want to share.
Bracha,
Yes.
but he did have undergarments because he wouldn't just run away and be naked. He was wearing
Yes, he didn't run outside naked. This is
right. He had like his regular tunic, whatever type of thing.
Yes, maybe he left his cloak. Okay, so anyway, what happened is she frames him. She says, going back to the regular story, she frames him and she says, Yosef tried to attack me, abuse me, or whatever. And of course, they don't believe Yosef, and he gets thrown into jail. Now, because Yosef is on his way to becoming a tzaddik, let's look at what happens to Yosef when he's in jail, right? He's in jail, and while he's in jail, he's so blessed. He's such a positive, non-complaining person. He didn't complain at Potiphar when he was in Potiphar's house, walking around sulking and moaning, my family abandoned me and now I'm a stupid old slave. And he was like so pleasant and so good that everything he did just was successful and blessed, and everything. Comes into jail and he's still this positive person, and everything he does is sort of blessed, and he ends up becoming the head of all the prisoners. And he's in jail, and who else is in jail? There's the chief cupbearer and the chief baker that are also thrown into jail with Yosef, and they in prison, and they each have a dream, and they don't feel so happy about their dream. But this is the part I want someone to read verses 6 and verses 7. Someone want to read who hasn't read yet? Verses 6 and 7. Yakova?
I would like to, but I'm having trouble.
Okay, someone else want to read?
Trying to go to full screen is not working.
I can read it. I enlarged it.
Okay, good.
6 and 7.
6 and 7, yeah.
And Yosef came to them in the morning, and he saw them, and behold, they were troubled. We're talking about the other people in the prison with them, right?
Yes, yes.
And he asked Paro's chamberlains who were with him in the prison of his master's house, saying, why are your faces sad today?
Okay. Now that's it. That's it. I don't want more.
No, I don't know what chamberlains are. Sorry. And
they were servants. They were servants. They were servants. They had been servants. They were Pharaoh's servants, and now they're in prison.
Okay, thank you.
Why are your faces sad today? Why are your faces sad today?
Well,
Yosef is in jail.
Because they both had dreams.
He shouldn't even be in Egypt. He shouldn't be in jail because he didn't do anything wrong. He was framed by his master's wife, lying about him. He could be in jail, like I said, sulking and miserable, but instead, what is he doing?
He asks how they are, why they're sad. He cares about
asks how they are. He cares about other people.
Smart.
He's interested in their well-being. He is not self-absorbed or self-absorbed. He's not selfish. He's not sulking. He cares about other people. The Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, says because he asked other people how they were, he ended up, they told him that they need a dream interpreted. they ended up, one of them, got killed. One of them went back to Pharaoh. When Pharaoh had dreams and didn't know how to interpret them, one of them said, oh, there was this guy in prison who interpreted my dream, because he asked them how they were. What happened to Yosef?
He was let out, he was redeemed. He interpreted
Right.
Not only
Pharaoh's
was he
dreams.
freed from, not only did he come out of jail, but
Becomes the
He went up in the
viceroy.
ranks. He went
he
up in the
became
ranks. even though-
viceroy. He
Mhm.
became the
Right.
second most important person. It all started with
Right,
him
up in the ranks.
looking at somebody else and asking, how are you? You seem upset. You look bothered. Can I help? A beautiful thing just from that. Everything started in his life to go right from him being
Thinking about
concerned about
somebody else.
another
Also,
person's suffering.
Wasn't he also exonerated for the supposed for the being framed because
They
either
gave
the
it up.
tailor or somebody recognized the way that the cut was, or the rip from on the cloak? No way could he have done it. It had to have been.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a nice extra piece. Thank
Oh,
you.
that is true though. I'm not wrong on that. There is
Well,
something.
I didn't, I think it sort of becomes a non-issue, really.
Oh, okay.
And then the last piece that I wanted to share with you is actually, it's actually not in this week's Parsha. It's in next week's Parsha. And I'm going to just try to find it quickly. But basically, I wanted to just say that I'll just read it to you because it's so beautiful, that the last piece of Yosef not feeling sorry for himself. Sorry, I just want to find this quote. I just want to find this quote where he tells his brothers, basically, where he says to his brothers, he completely forgives his brothers. That's like we started off that we had the Lashon Hara, and then it goes all the way till at the end of the story with Yosef and his brothers. He basically says to his brothers, it's not because of you that I got sent to Mitzrayim. It's because of God. God wanted me to be here so that I could save Egypt and I could save you, and I'm not going to blame you at all. It's completely God. God orchestrated this whole thing. And so Yosef, the one who in the beginning is speaking Lashon Hara about his brothers, goes to Mitzrayim, which in Chassidus we call it a descent. Obviously, he's a free person in Israel, and now the next minute he's in Egypt, in jail. First of all, a slave in Egypt, then even more, framed slave in jail at the absolute bottom of everything. You can't be, he was a foreigner, he was no one advocating, he was a young 17-year-old, he could have just rotted there forever. And he goes to the depth, and then he comes from that place, he comes up. So we say in Chassidus, a yerida for the sake of an aliyah. That, and through it all, he's always trusting in God. He's always feeling that that there's a deeper purpose to everything that's happening, and not only a deeper purpose, but that God is orchestrating everything. So when he actually says, I found my quote. When he actually, at the end, when the brothers, they go to bury their father when Yaakov passes away, and Yosef leads them right past the pit that they threw him in on the way to burying their father. And the brothers are thinking, oh my gosh, he's going to really take it out on us. He says, am I God? Only God can see the future. God placed me here to save my life, your lives, and all of our lives. Please don't feel bad. God sent me here as a force of life before you. It's a good thing. Like, that's pretty That's like an incredible turnaround from being hated by his brothers, sold to slave merchants, thrown in jail, framed, etc., etc. And then he said, and he always is never complaining, never miserable, always kind of turning his situations to a positive experience somehow, which is unbelievable. Everything he does is always blessed. You never hear him complaining. And that idea that ultimately he proclaims that God was orchestrating everything, and that ultimately it all worked out, that he was where he was. It all had a reason. It was all meant to be. And
So
yeah,
can I ask you my question now? Because
sure.
It's interesting that he becomes such a Baal Madriga just on his own. I'm just wondering, like, I don't know if Avram had all these tests. I'm just wondering, like, where did he get the ability? You know, like Yaakov.
I'll answer your question. I'll answer your question.
Okay.
Even though Yosef was a person who, when he was in his father's house, he had some things to learn, and he showed some unrefined characteristics. From the moment he was born, Yaakov knew that he had the successor that he was waiting for, in order for him to be able to leave Lavan's house and go back and confront Esav. Until Yosef is born, he didn't feel that he could do that. And when Yosef is born, Yaakov feels that Yosef has all the ingredients to be the one who takes the spiritual Yerusha, the spiritual inheritance of Yaakov. And Yaakov knew that Yosef was the one. Maybe because
by his nature,
like
you see by his nature, right? Certain people by their nature, even as children or younger, you could see they have different
but he
tendencies.
Even though he was this person that his father identified right away, and he was the only son, well, he wasn't the only son, but he was the first son from Rachel. But Yaakov saw that Yosef has this potential. But when he told over the dreams, which actually there's a halacha that if you have a prophecy, you're supposed to share it. There was a part of Yosef that needed to be refined. He was a little insensitive. He was a little insensitive to his brothers. He was told these tattletales, which we could say was Lashon Hara. He did certain things that showed that he wasn't perfect and he needed to mature, but he still was the one who had those raw ingredients that his father saw, that his father could take all the potency of the bracha that he had received from Yitzchak and pass it on to Yosef. Yosef just had to mature and evolve, and then he fully embraced that potential that had been there all along.
But it's not like they discussed Hashem with each other. Like Abraham noticed Hashem on his own, but where in like the Chumash do we ever see anyone? I mean, all right, never mind. I don't know enough to say it, but did he hear Yaakov saying,
No.
Boys,
1 second. Yaakov and Yosef were learning Torah. Yaakov and Yosef were learning Torah together. And we know that because one of the Perushim on the coat of many colors is exactly says that Yosef and Yaakov were learning esoteric, mystical Torahs together, and Yaakov wanted to make that less overt, so he gave him like a Gashmias present to maybe throw people off the track, that Yosef is not so holy, that he's into clothes, and that it was almost like to disguise how holy he was, that he gave him the coat. That's one explanation. Also, when Yosef finds out that his father is still alive, he sends him wagons. And the Meforshim say that those wagons were a hint to the last thing that they were learning together, which had to do with Egel Arufa, something, which was what they had been learning Torah together. So they learned Torah together, no question about it.
Mhm.
Thank you. Just because to hear that he is being able to be at such a madriga, you don't, you know,
The
you
only
no
person
offense to
in the
anyone
Chumash,
else.
he's the only person in the Chumash really referred to as a tzaddik, because it's Abraham Avinu, Yitzchak Avinu, Yaakov Avinu,
Right.
Moshe Rabbeinu,
Mhm.
Aaron
I mean,
HaKohen.
Avram passed a lot of tests. Those
Yeah, really.
Nisyonos
I
did not
mean, if anybody was a tzaddik,
But Yosef is the one who's called Yosef HaTzadik. Abraham is called Avram Avinu.
right.
Because Abraham was Chesed and Yaakov was Gevura, but neither of those are really integrated.
Mhm.
Yaakov is the one who put them together, and then Yaakov bequeaths that together, the path of integration goes down to his son Yosef, because in the tree of life,
Right.
Abraham is right hand.
Mhm.
Yaakov is left hand. Yitzchak is left hand. Yaakov is the heart, and then right underneath the heart, down the middle line into the Yesod is Yosef. So he's part of that path of integration that Yaakov starts, not to the left, not to the right, but in the middle.
I mean, it makes sense, but to just sort of say Avram Avinu, I mean, the Nisyonos he had, especially the take your son and shecht him. To me,
He
you know, I'm
passed
not
a
going to
lot
say
of.
that makes him a tzaddik, but that's a test.
The
Especially
difference
since
is that
you know
Yosef
he waited for
managed.
this child his whole life.
The thing is
You
that
know what I mean? And
they
he
had-
trusted Hashem enough. Yosef was able to have enough strength to turn away a lady and say, you know,
it's
that's
not
like a
just
nice
that.
thing. But the fact that he like Hashem says, I'm sorry, but you have to shecht your son and just like slice him and kill him.
Okay, so
And
let me
Avram said,
let me
okay,
answer
well
the
that's what you
question.
want.
I hear your question. Let me answer it. So every one of our avot and our imahot, our matriarchs and our patriarchs have played a role. Abraham's role is like Shachrit. It's like the beginning of a new day. Abraham discovers God. Abraham discovers monotheism. Abraham is the father of Judaism. He's the father of Christianity. He's the father, because Christianity comes from Judaism. He's the father of all the Muslims. He's the father of monotheism in the world. He plays a tremendous role. But Abraham's life was lived in the desert, and he was kind of wandering out there. He was a shepherd. He had some interactions with Pharaoh and with Avimelech, but basically he had an experience with God. He made some converts. He dug wells. His wells were filled. They didn't really last into the next generation. Yitzchak had to dig them again. But he proclaimed one God. What Yosef did is Yosef managed to stay a Jew and keep all his mitzvot and have two children and live in the midst of the biggest culture of that time and not betray his values. He lived in Egypt. He became viceroy. He managed to sustain the whole of Egypt and all the countries around Egypt who came to Egypt for food during this famine. He managed to keep his integrity and his identity in the midst. It's like, imagine somebody who's from right now. They're very from, and they in a farm, or they in some, nice place in Eretz Israel, and they have their family around, and they're very spiritual, and they're communing with God. Maybe they in Bnei Brak, or maybe they're on a yeshuv somewhere, and they with the shepherding and everything, and they're very, very holy. And then you have another person who's really in the White House, talking, in the middle of all the Western schmutz, all the Western fakery, all the Western trickery, all the Western horribleness, and he's standing strong, becomes a leader, doesn't betray his faith, stays connected to God all the time through that, in that, and
And
has
he
two
managed to still
children.
keep Shabbos. In the middle of everything, he was willing to say, it's Shabbos. I don't do these things
Right.
on my.
I keep Shabbos. I keep kosher. We even bless on Shabbos that our children should be like his
Like
children
Ephraim
who
and
were
Manasseh.
born in Egypt, born in the middle of Hollywood, Parliament, White House, schmutz, and they righteous individuals. So Joseph had a capacity to be in the world and be uncorrupted in the world. No one else was able to do that to that extent. Even Yaakov wasn't playing in the kind of role that Joseph played, sustaining everyone, orchestrating everyone, playing and putting all the parts together for everyone, and staying unangry, forgiving, and connected to Hashem at all times, no matter what happened to him, no matter where he went, what he did. He's always like, I always imagine him, he's always like, Gamzu Latova, this too shall pass. I'm in God's hands and everything's going to be good. And he never loses his balance. He never loses his foundation. He never loses his integrity. And he's put into a lot of interesting situations, and he stays powerful and he stays integral to his identity. That's why he's who he is. Good question. Okay, I think that's it for tonight. I wish you, so we didn't really talk about Hanukkah, and Hanukkah's coming, but just to say that Hanukkah is the light in the darkness, and we definitely need as much light as we can shed. And
And the miracles.
every mitzvah, every candle illuminates, and all the meanings of Hanukkah are more apropos, now than ever in our lifetime. And just to remind you that next week's class will be a live Verbringen here at 8 o'clock. It will be on Zoom as well, but if you can come and eat I don't know what we're going to have. Hopefully,
Can we bring anything? Do you need
donuts and
anything?
latkes. Well, we'll try and do donuts and latkes. If anybody, I don't know, do I need anything? If somebody wants to, we can talk about it afterwards.
Okay, fine.
Racha,
Yes.
you know what I just had a memory of? That my sister and I were at your house and we were making latkes. I guess it was during Hanukkah. I remember you had this amazing oil that made the latkes taste special.
Oh, that's good to know.
What's the special oil that you had?
Yeah.
It wasn't just like canola oil. It was
Right.
safflower, something
Oh yeah,
like
there's no butternut squash on Zoom. Yeah, by the way, I try never to use canola oil because it's not a good oil. So don't
No,
use
it's
canola
not.
oil if
Yeah,
can.
we
you probably don't remember, right? Your son was like 12 or something.
Oh, he just
a
turned
long time
20
ago.
today, by the way.
Oh my goodness.
His
Wow.
birthday is
Really?
Erev Hanukkah. He's the 23rd.
this is your
of
youngest?
Kislev.
Wow.
That's your
Joseph.
youngest?
Yeah, my
Wow.
youngest, my Ben Zakunim.
Oh,
So
Ben
that's
maybe
goodness.
Liz and I came to you for Hanukkah or something.
Yeah, well, his birthday is right before Hanukkah. And anyway, he's in Eretz Israel. He's studying in yeshiva there.
Oh.
Well, and he should be safe. And
Yeah, amen.
yeah.
I mean,
Okay,
Joseph.
so
Okay, have a-
anyway, thank you
Okay,
everyone for
Amen.
listening, and
Shabbos.
see you in person.
Thank you. See you next week,
and
God willing.
Caleb and Hanukkah.
Bye, Yaakova.
Thank you, Bracha. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, all
See you
the
later.
best.
Bye-bye.
Bye, bye, bye.
Bye.
Bye.